Welcome to this lesson on probability basics for problem solving and data sufficiency use on the GMAT. So let us begin by just talking about the definition of probability. So the probability for a single event, the probability is indicated by the P here, is going to be defined as the desired outcomes out of the total possible outcomes. And we've got this illustration that we'll be using considering a pair of six-sided dice here in a moment. So the range for all probabilities is always defined as being between 0 and 1 inclusive, because the probability of 0 is an impossibility. So that is where out of your possible outcomes, 0 are desired. So the minimum possible probability for any event is going to be 0 if no outcome is desired. And your probability of 1 is going to be a certainty, because that dictates that all possible outcomes are desired. So, for instance, if we're considering our six-sided die here, if we're asked, we wanted to know the probability of rolling a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 on one of these dice, it would be 1, because those are the only options, 1 through 6. So your range of all probabilities is always going to be 0 to 1 inclusive. So then we've got to consider the probability for multiple independent events. And the way that you calculate the probability for multiple independent events is going to be the probability for the first event times the probability of the second event, and that's going to give you the probability for both. So let's take a look at an example. So what is the probability of rolling a 1 and then a 2 in that order? So the way that you could consider the operation here is if you are being asked for the probability of this and that, you always have to multiply the two probabilities. So the number of desired outcomes is going to be 1 for each event, the roll as it were here. So if we're considering just one roll of one of these six-sided die, the probability of rolling a 1 is going to be 1 out of 6 for the first roll. Then the probability of rolling a 2 is going to be a 1 out of 6 on the second roll. And then you're going to multiply those two independent probabilities to find that the probability for rolling exactly a 1 and then a 2 on two six-sided dice is going to be 1/6 times 1/6 is equal to 1/36. So then the probability for multiple outcomes of a single event, however, is going to be the probability of the first desired outcome plus the probability of the second desired outcome, and that's going to be the probability of either desired outcome. So let's consider another example involving our dice. So what is the probability of rolling a 1 or a 2? So your differentiator here is previously we considered this and that as a probabilistic scenario. Here we're considering this or that. The probability of rolling a 1 or a 2 on a single roll is going to indicate that we are going to take the sum of these probabilities. So the number of desired outcomes is going to be 2 for this single event, the roll. And so the probability of either a 1 or a 2 here is going to be the probability of 1 out of 6 for rolling a 1 plus the probability of 1 out of 6 for rolling a 2, which is equal to 2 out of 6, which of course can be simplified down to a probability of 1/3 for the probability of rolling a 1 or a 2 on a single roll of a six-sided dice. So now let's consider a more complex event outcome. So what is the probability of rolling at least 1/3 in two independent rolls? So the number of possible iterations of the desired outcome is going to be 3, because we could roll a 1 on, we could roll a 3 on the first roll, or a 3 on the second roll, or a 3 in both rolls. So we've got to consider both, or all of the different iterations of getting at least 1/3 in two rolls. So the probability of rolling a 3 on the first roll is going to be 1 out of 6. There's 1/3 on the six-sided dice, times 6 out of 6, because anything is desired on the second roll, provided that we had a 3 on the first. So it's 6 out of 36, or just remains as 1/6. Then the probability of a 3 on the second roll is going to be 6 out of 6 on the first roll, because we do not care what the first roll's outcome is, times 1 out of 6 for the 3 on the second roll. So that will be another 6 out of 36. But then we have to consider the probability of rolling a 3 on both of the rolls independently. So that would be 1 out of 6 chance of rolling a 3 on the first roll, 1 out of 6 chance on rolling a 3 on the second roll, which means that we'd have a 1 out of 36 chance of rolling a 3 on both rolls exactly. Now, we have to avoid double counting the both roll event by using the group equation for overlapping sets, because we don't want to count the both rolls because it's already been allocated in both the first and second roll. So the group equation for overlapping sets dictates that your total amount is equal to group 1 plus group 2 minus the overlap plus neither. So that means that we have to subtract out that both rolls of a 3 on both rolls of the dice because it's already been counted in both the first roll and the second roll. So our probability of at least 1 3 in 2 rolls is going to be 6 out of 36 plus 6 out of 36 minus the 1 out of 36 overlap, which is going to be equal to exactly 1136. And you can see that this was a relatively detailed scenario. Now, there is another way to work through that scenario that's a little bit more straightforward, and that's our at least probability. So an at least probability is going to be equal to 1 minus the exception or exceptions probability. So we're going to revisit the exact same scenario. So what is the probability of rolling at least 1 3 in those 2 rolls of the 6-sided dice? So the number of desired outcomes is 1 for each event. So again, we want to have a 3 or we want to have a 3. But we know that the number of exception outcomes is 5 for each event, because we would have 5 not 3s on the first roll and 5 not 3s on the second roll. So our exception probability is going to be 5 out of 6 that is not desired for the first roll, meaning every value on the dice except for 3, times every value on the 6-sided dice except for 3 for another 5 out of 6 probability on the second roll. We take the product of those two probabilities and find that there are 25 out of 36 rolls that do not involve the 3. Then we simply have to subtract that 25 out of 36 from 1, find the common denominator, which would be, of course, 36 out of 36, subtract the exceptions, and we get to the exact same 11 out of 36 probability in what I like to think is a more streamlined fashion. So those are several different probability scenarios that are very common to encounter within the GMAT. Let's take a look at a couple of sample problems here as well to evaluate how to apply these rules of probability in real GMAT sample problems. Okay, let's take a look at a sample problem-solving question for the GMAT quantitative section involving probability. So, as always, go ahead and set up your scratch pad first so that you don't lose sight of what the answer choices are, set up process of elimination potentially, and make sure that you figure out what you're being asked to solve for first. So, in this case, we can see that we start at the end of the scenario that if there's a 4% probability of an individual fuse failing during any 24-hour period, then the probability of the building's power being shut off during any given 24-hour period is closest to what? So we're looking for the probability of a shutoff. So we've got that set up. I'm probably not going to write out the answer choices when the answers are a little bit convoluted like this. We could write out 0.04 to the 5th power, but it's pretty widespread, and I'm probably not going to back solve because of the probability setup and the weird little expressions at the end. But we will, however, immediately start taking notes as we begin. So we find that in a utility room fuse box, there are 5 fuses. So total is equal to 5. And we know that if one or more of the fuses were to fail, during any given 24-hour period, then power would be temporarily shut off to the entire building as a safety precaution. So there is then a 4% probability of an individual fuse failing. So we know that the fail probability is equal to 0.04, which means that the not fail probability is going to be equal to 0.96, because we know from what we just discussed that the sum of any probability when it comes to the possible events or the possible outcomes is going to be that one sum. So we set it up and we know that, of course, 0.04 plus 0.96 is going to be 1, and it's a dichotomous option that you either fail or you don't. So that's how we know that the not fail probability has to be 0.96. So then we've got to consider about how the circumstance do not fail. So we know that the entire power has to be shut off if one or more of the fuses were to fail. So we know if at least one fails, all fail. So that means that we're looking at an exception probability here. So we know that the exception is going to be 0 fails. And the probability of 0 fails is going to be that all 5 have a 0.96. And since we want a not fail and another not fail and another not fail to get to the exact exception scenario of 0 fails, we know we're going to have 0.96 times itself 5 times. So that's our one situation where there isn't a shutoff. So that means that the at least one fail scenario is going to be equal to 1 minus this exception, which is going to be 0.96 raised to the 5th power, and that, of course, matches choice E. So this is all about understanding the theory of probability, not necessarily doing like the crazy calculation that it looks like might be necessary when we started this problem, but you can see how by just knowing the basic definitions of probabilities, you can solve what may be qualifying as a harder problem-solving question on the exam. So now let's go ahead and we'll scroll down and consider this next problem involving Pedro and his bag full of marbles. So, considering Pedro and his marbles, just like every data sufficiency, we need to start with what we know. So we start with a K here, indicating that no. It says Pedro has a bag full of marbles. So we don't know how many marbles there are, but let's just say marbles, we'll call it M, to begin assigning variables as quickly as possible. So then we're told that Pedro is going to select one marble at random from the bag. So selections is equal to one event, because again, we know that we're not going to have to necessarily do any multiplication at this point just because there is a single event when it comes to the probability. So then we're asked, is the probability that he selects a red marble, so is probability of red less than 1/2? And this, of course, is a yes-no data sufficiency, so we'll just go ahead and box this off so we don't lose sight of what the problem is asking for the value of. So then, we've got to consider what we need. And from that definition position of probability that we talked about earlier in this lesson, what we really need to know in order to determine is the probability of selecting a red less than 1/2 is basically if R out of M is less than 1/2. And remember that we can also do some manipulation up front for anything algebraically, and we really want to get rid of fractions in most cases, so we're just going to cross multiply here. to get ourselves in a position where we'll be able to evaluate this inequality a little bit more directly, knowing that since the number of marbles has to be positive, we don't have to worry about flipping the inequality sign. We need to know is 2r less than m. So either situation, either r over m is less than 1/2, or if 2r is less than m. So now that we've got what we need, we go to our conditions. So condition 1 just tells us there are 24 red marbles in the bag. So r is equal to 24. Well, that gets me 1/2 of my inequality that we needed, but I know nothing about m. M could equal 48, in which case, is the probability that he will select a red marble less than 1/2? The answer would be no. But we also know that m could equal, say, 25, or, sorry, let's go with just 200, a bigger number, and the answer here would be yes, of course. 24 out of 200 would be well less than 1/2. But both options are available, so because of that, we know we can come in here and just X this out. And remember that if condition 1 is not sufficient, our options for the answers are B, C, or E, because choice B means only condition 2 is sufficient. Choice C means that together the conditions are sufficient, but not alone. And choice E means that at no point, even when we combine the conditions, are they sufficient to determine the answer to the question, which of course in this case is the probability of selecting a red marble less than 1/2. So condition 2 says that there are 3 red marbles in the bag for every 8 marbles in the bag that are not red. So that means that R is equal to 3, right? And we know that there are 3 red marbles in the bag for every 8 marbles in the bag that are not red. So we know our total here in the ratio, which would be equal to the marbles, would be M, is going to be 11. So we know that 3 red marbles for every 8 marbles that are not red, and you either have red or not red. So our ratio we can now set up as R over M is equal to 3 over 11. And the question, of course, is the probability of red less than 1/2? Well, 3 over 11 is less than 1/2. And we've gotten to the proportion directly. We can answer the question without hesitation. It's always yes. And again, always try to stick to just an algebraic articulation of the information that is provided on a data sufficiency, so that we don't have to plug in haphazardly and waste time. But in this case, we have determined that condition 2 is sufficient on its own. Condition 1 is not. So our answer is, of course, B. So go ahead and do some additional practice problems on your own involving probabilities to build this skill for your attempt at the GMAT exam.